It started with a flash, bright enough to blind anyone who dared look up. The first wave of the invasion arrived without warning, cutting through the night sky like a storm. Towering alien ships, each one the size of a city block, came into view, blocking out the stars. Across the globe, people stared in shock and awe as the spacecraft descended into Earth's atmosphere. Massive, angular, and gleaming with an otherworldly glow, they seemed to come from a time and place far beyond human understanding. The Zincori had arrived. News stations across the world fell silent for a moment, as anchors struggled to comprehend what they were witnessing. The airwaves crackled with confusion as reports flooded in from every corner of the planet. Governments declared emergency states, military forces scrambled to defend against the unimaginable, and citizens gathered in their homes or the streets, uncertain of what was to come. It was a moment of profound disbelief. No one had ever truly expected this to happen. But even in the midst of the chaos, there was an undercurrent of something else. Calm. It wasn't panic. There was no mass hysteria or widespread fear. Instead, there was something more unsettling, a quiet preparation that seemed to echo through every corner of the world. People weren't just reacting to the arrival of the aliens. They were waiting for the inevitable. In cities across the globe, a strange kind of order began to emerge. While government leaders issued vague statements, many ordinary citizens started moving with purpose. Military vehicles rolled out of hidden bases, some of which had never been disclosed to the public. Air Force jets lined up on runways, their engines roaring to life, ready for an order to scramble. But no order came, not yet. Instead, human eyes turned to the skies, watching as the alien ships loomed larger with every passing second. In one small underground facility, tucked away in a mountain range, a group of engineers and military officers stood in front of an enormous holographic map. The Zincori ships hovered above major population centers, their weapons poised. Most of the world's military forces were gearing up for a fight, but it wasn't their military that had been quietly preparing for this day. Hidden beneath the surface, humanity had been working on something much bigger than anyone knew. For decades, a select few had been working on technology that could turn the tide in this war before it even started. The Earth's defenses were unlike anything the Zincori could have imagined. Every major nation, every leading scientist and engineer, had contributed to a global project that was shrouded in secrecy. An alliance formed in preparation for the worst. The Zincori had made their mistake by thinking Earth was an easy target, a primitive world ripe for the picking. On the surface, most citizens had no idea how advanced humanity had become in their preparations, but in secret, high-tech defense satellites were powered up and launched into the sky, hidden in plain sight among the growing shadows of the alien invaders. Global defense systems, some of them decades old, others fresh and cutting-edge, were now active. The Zincori were about to find out what humanity was really capable of. The first alien shot, fired from a sleek Zincori destroyer, cracked across the sky, aimed at a bustling city below. It was meant to strike fear into the hearts of Earth's people, to show them how hopeless their situation was. But instead of falling into terror, people turned their heads and looked at the skies. They were ready. The Zincori's weapon hit nothing but a shimmering, invisible shield, one of Earth's most secret defenses, activated at the perfect moment. Then came the roar of counterattacks. The Zincori fleet, stunned by the sudden resistance, flinched. The war had only just begun, but the invaders would soon realize that humanity was far more prepared than they ever could have imagined. The Zincori fleet hung ominously over Earth, their massive ships hovering in perfect formation, as if to show the sheer power they wielded. With the planet's cities beneath them, they began their bombardment, believing that humanity's defenses were nothing more than a joke. The first shot was a brutal demonstration of their power. An energy beam so intense it would obliterate entire skyscrapers in seconds. It struck a large city in Asia, reducing it to rubble within moments. Thousands died in an instant, and the world watched in horror. But even in the midst of such destruction, There was no panic. There was only silence and a cold certainty. Seconds after the attack, a new sound filled the air, an almost imperceptible hum that quickly grew louder. Thousands of military satellites, hidden from the prying eyes of the world, activated in perfect synchronicity. They had been watching, waiting for this moment, and now the time had come. Across the globe, from secret military bases to civilian bunkers, the countdown began. The alien ships had no idea what was coming. Across Earth's atmosphere, dozens of high-tech defense satellites locked on to the Zincori fleet. Weapons previously thought to be theoretical or impossible to implement suddenly flared to life. First came the pulse, an electromagnetic wave, invisible to the human eye, but powerful enough to disable any electronic systems in its path. The first Zincori ships began to falter, their advanced weaponry and communication systems failing as they lost power. The Zincori had expected to easily destroy the primitive humans. Instead, they were thrown into confusion as their own systems began to short-circuit. Then came the missiles. The humans had developed a new breed of missile, ones that weren't just designed to explode. They were designed to dismantle alien technology at its core. They had been years in the making, hidden in plain sight beneath the guise of research satellites. And now they shot across the sky at breakneck speeds, targeting the alien ships with deadly accuracy. Each one packed with devastating force, they tore into the Zincori fleet. Alien ships exploded in a massive cascade of light and sound, their reinforced hulls unable to withstand the pinpoint strikes. Some ships plummeted to Earth's surface in fiery arcs, while others vanished into space, crippled beyond repair. On the ground, military commanders and world leaders finally started to believe this wasn't just a fight for survival. Humanity had a real chance to win. But the Zincori weren't finished. They had the advantage of size, and they weren't going to be defeated so easily. They'd regrouped quickly, launching a retaliatory strike of their own. Wave after wave of plasma bolts rained down on Earth, aiming to wipe out military outposts and key infrastructure. The sky filled with fire as the Zincori sought to regain control, but it was clear they weren't prepared for the strength of human resolve. In the midst of this chaos, a voice crackled over the global comm system, a voice that resonated with every soldier, every civilian, and every fighter across the world. It was the voice of General Amelia Richards, the newly appointed commander of Earth's combined forces. Her calm, determined tone brought unity to all who heard it. Prepare for Phase 2. This is our world, and we are not going down without a fight. Across the globe, humans rallied together. Those who had been sitting in front of their televisions watching in disbelief now donned their uniforms and took to the streets, ready to fight. Civilian militias activated, many of them armed with weapons they had been training to use for years. Preparations no one outside the top echelons of government knew about. From hidden bunkers to towering skyscrapers, humanity had turned every inch of the planet into a battleground. The Zincori had underestimated Earth's unity, its preparation, and the burning fire within its people. As the alien ships regrouped for another attack, they couldn't have known that they had already awoken the beast. Humanity was ready. The Zincori fleet, reeling from the initial assault, was slow to recover. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were being forced into a defensive position. The mighty warships that had been designed to intimidate and crush were now vulnerable. They had underestimated one crucial element. Humans fight not just with weapons, but with ingenuity. On the ground, the battle had taken on a new form. The alien invaders, accustomed to overwhelming force, were now confronted with an opponent they couldn't easily dominate. Earth's military and civilian resistance were spreading like wildfire, striking from unexpected places, using the very terrain they knew so well to their advantage. From dense urban jungles to rural farmlands, humanity was unleashing tactics that the Zincori had never anticipated. As the Zincori forces attempted to regroup and push back the human counterattacks, they found themselves caught in a series of escalating ambushes. Small resistance groups, mostly civilian militias, had set up traps along the highways and in the forests. They were armed with whatever weapons they could find, but their greatest weapon was their knowledge of the terrain. An alien convoy attempting to move supplies was ambushed by a well-coordinated strike. Explosives rigged to the roadways detonated just as the convoy entered a narrow canyon, causing massive explosions that took out several Zincori transports. The aliens were left scrambling, their once precise formations now in chaos. It was more than just guerrilla tactics. The human spirit of resilience, adaptability, and resourcefulness turned the tide in the battle. Humans didn't simply fight to survive. They fought to outthink their enemies. As the Zincori struggled to keep up with the ambushes, they became increasingly frustrated. In their arrogance, they had assumed that human tactics would be predictable, easy to crush. But humanity had learned how to survive against overwhelming odds, and now they were teaching their invaders a painful lesson. Among the chaos, General Amelia Richards led a special task force, an elite team of soldiers, hackers, and engineers. They were sent on a crucial mission: infiltrate the Zincori's command ship and sabotage their core systems. The task force was smaller than any army would have liked, but they had one advantage: speed. While the alien ships were massive and slow, the humans had their agility. They moved quickly through the war-torn streets of the city, using its collapsed structures and underground tunnels to stay out of sight. The team had a single objective: take out the Zincori's central command system, cutting off communication and disrupting their chain of command. As they approached the alien vessel, now half hidden in the ruins of a major city, the human task force felt a surge of purpose. The Zincori had invaded Earth with a sense of invincibility, but now they were on the back foot. Earth's soldiers moved like shadows, silent, efficient, and ready. Inside the alien ship, everything was quiet, almost eerily so. The command room was a maze of high-tech consoles, humming with alien energy. The task force had one window of opportunity before the Zincori realized what was happening. The countdown was ticking down, and the team knew that any mistake could cost them everything. But they were prepared. The humans had studied the Zincori for months, learning their systems, their weaknesses, and their patterns. When the moment came, they struck hard. A burst of EMP technology shut down the Zincori's power grid, throwing the ship into disarray. The task force moved with deadly precision, planting charges on key systems and ensuring that the alien command would never be the same. Outside, the rest of humanity kept pushing forward. The Zincori ships above them were no longer untouchable. Earth's military forces had managed to develop a countermeasure for their weapons, turning the tide of the battle. The Zincori were losing their grip on Earth, and they knew it. Humanity was no longer just surviving. It was fighting back. The Zincori had always prided themselves on their ability to crush worlds with overwhelming force. Their conquests across the galaxy had been quick and brutal, leaving no room for resistance. They had never met a species like humanity before, one that didn't surrender, didn't break. In their eyes, Earth was supposed to be an easy target, a primitive planet waiting to be subdued. But now, as their fleet suffered devastating losses and their command systems continued to falter, something they hadn't anticipated was becoming painfully clear. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. In the wake of the sabotage, the Zincori scrambled to regain control of their ships. Their once dominant fleet, a terrifying spectacle of advanced technology, was no longer the unstoppable juggernaut it had been. The tide was turning, and with each passing day, humanity's resolve grew stronger. The aliens had expected Earth's defenses to be disorganized, its people easily frightened. Instead, they found themselves caught in a web of human ingenuity and sheer willpower. The Zincori commander, General Varkin, stood on the bridge of his flagship, glaring at the data screens in disbelief. His forces were losing ground. The humans, once insignificant to the Galactic Empire, had evolved into something far more dangerous. Each attack they launched was precise, well-coordinated, and devastating. Human resistance groups, from highly trained military units to makeshift civilian militias, had become more than just fighters. They had become a symbol of defiance, a symbol of Earth's undying will to survive. "What is wrong with our forces?" Varkin snarled at his officers. "How are they so effective? Why aren't they cowering? We should have crushed them by now." His second in command, a tall, dark-skinned Zincori lieutenant named Zarek, spoke up. "We underestimated them, General. These humans, they are not what we thought they were. They adapt quickly. Every attack we launch, they counter. They turn our weaknesses against us." Varkin slammed his fist onto the console in frustration. His pride was wounded. The Zincori had never been outmatched before, and now they were being humbled by a species they once considered little more than a collection of chaotic primitives. Meanwhile, on the ground, humanity was far from finished. Earth's leaders had called upon their people, and they had answered. The world, once divided by politics and old grudges, had united under a single banner: survival. Across every continent, the resistance flourished. Entire cities turned into battlegrounds as civilians, once unsure of their own ability to fight back, now took up arms with fervor. Every neighborhood became a front line. Even children, trained in secret camps, joined in, acting as messengers, scouts, and sharpshooters in the most unexpected places. The Zincori continued to attack, sending wave after wave of ships and soldiers to quell the human uprising. But Earth's people were no longer fighting simply to defend their homes. They were fighting to prove something. They were fighting for their future, for their families, for the very planet beneath their feet. The more the Zincori pushed, the more fierce the resistance became. One particular human soldier, Sergeant Marcus Donovan, a former high school teacher turned militia leader, had become a symbol of Earth's fight. His team of soldiers had just ambushed a Zincori convoy, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Donovan stood over the wreckage, breathing heavily, his face smeared with dirt and blood, yet his eyes were full of determination. "They'll learn," he muttered to his team. "They'll learn that humanity doesn't just survive. We fight back." With every victory, large and small, the Zincori felt the sting of their mistake. The resistance was everywhere now, growing faster, harder, and fiercer than they ever thought possible. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight. They had underestimated human will. The Zincori had made a grave error, and now it was too late to undo it. The Zincori's strategy had faltered, and the human resistance was becoming a relentless force. As their fleet scrambled to maintain control of the skies, Earth's people were preparing for the final stages of the war, something the invaders never saw coming. There was a secret, buried deep in Earth's underground facilities, that even the most seasoned military commanders had kept hidden. A weapon so powerful, it had the potential to change the entire course of the war. For years, a select group of scientists, engineers, and military strategists had been working on something called Project Prometheus, a global initiative shrouded in secrecy. The project was intended not only to defend Earth but to ensure that humanity would never again be caught off guard by a threat like the Zincori. It was a weapon designed to exploit the weaknesses of alien technology, an ancient defense system that Earth had been slowly reverse engineering from alien technology discovered years earlier. The secret wasn't just in the weapon itself, but in the power source it relied on. Unbeknownst to the invaders, the Zincori were the perfect target for humanity's secret weapon because their energy source was volatile and extremely vulnerable. It was a dangerous gamble. If it didn't work, humanity would be left with nothing. But if they succeeded, Earth would have a fighting chance, perhaps even the upper hand. Inside a nondescript facility, deep within the heart of a mountain range, the final components of the weapon were being activated. Dr. Lena Carson, the lead scientist behind Project Prometheus, watched intently as her team worked tirelessly. The lab was humming with the sound of machines, as technicians ran diagnostics on the intricate systems that powered the new weapon. At the center of the lab stood a massive device, something that looked both ancient and futuristic, its surface glowing with strange symbols and alien patterns. "This is it," Dr. Carson whispered to herself, her fingers tracing the glowing interface. "This is our moment." The device was powered by a rare element, one that had been hidden from the public for decades. The human race had found a way to harness it, a discovery that had given them an edge over their invaders. It wasn't just a physical weapon. It was an energy disruptor on a massive scale, capable of rendering any Zincori ship or device useless by severing its energy connection. Once activated, it would cause a cascade effect throughout the entire Zincori fleet. Their advanced technology, their warships, their powerful weapons, all of it would become inert, leaving the invaders vulnerable. "We have one shot," Dr. Carson said, turning to her team. "Once we deploy it, there's no turning back. We either win or we lose everything." Meanwhile, across the globe, military forces were preparing for the moment when they would strike. The secret weapon was their last hope, and every soldier knew the risks. But Earth had no other choice. They had to trust in the secret, in their preparations, and in their resolve. As the weapon reached its final stages of readiness, General Amelia Richards gathered her forces. She stood before a massive digital map, her face illuminated by the cold blue light of the screens. "This is our final chance," she said, her voice calm but filled with a fierce determination. "The Zincori are running out of time. So are we. This is not just about defending our planet. This is about sending a message to the stars. We're not just survivors. We are humanity." Across the globe, resistance cells, military units, and civilian fighters received their orders. They would launch an all-out assault on the Zincori fleet. The key to success was simple: distraction. With the Zincori distracted by the relentless human forces, the final deployment of Project Prometheus would disable their fleet and cripple their ability to fight back. In the heart of the enemy's territory, an infiltration team was already on its way to deliver the payload. The battle for Earth was far from over, but humanity was about to reveal its trump card. The world had become a battleground. Every continent, every city, every mountain range was now a place of conflict. The Zincori, despite their technological supremacy, were beginning to show signs of wear. The alien invaders had failed to crush humanity as they had hoped. They had underestimated the humans' will to fight and their capacity for resilience. But now, Earth was ready to strike the final blow. The Zincori fleet loomed above the planet, their ships still occupying the skies, though their once imposing presence now appeared to be faltering. Every human resistance cell, every military unit, was preparing for the last assault. The key to their success lay in a single mission: the deployment of Project Prometheus. A team of elite soldiers, led by General Amelia Richards herself, was ready to infiltrate the Zincori's most fortified ship, the Varkan-class flagship, and deliver the weapon that could change everything. Amelia stood in the war room, her eyes scanning the map of the enemy fleet on the large digital screen. The plan was in motion. It was all set. Now it was a matter of execution. "We have one shot at this," she said to her team, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "Once the weapon is deployed, we can cripple their fleet. The distraction will be our opening. We hit them hard, and we hit them fast. This ends today." The tension in the room was palpable. The soldiers, battle-worn and hardened, knew the stakes. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to free the Earth, to reclaim their world from the invaders who had believed they could dominate it. As Amelia's team prepared to board the shuttle that would take them to the Varkan-class flagship, the countdown for the final strike began. The clock on the digital map ticked down. 3 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour. The world was holding its breath. Meanwhile, in the skies above, the human forces were engaging the Zincori in full force. Fighter jets, drones, and newly activated anti-aircraft missiles tore through the air as humanity's last push began. The Zincori had never expected this level of resistance. The military units had formed a nearly impenetrable web of defenses, striking with pinpoint accuracy at every weakness they could find. As the alien ships fired back, they were met with a relentless barrage from Earth's most advanced weaponry, proving that Earth had evolved beyond what the Zincori had thought possible. On the ground, human soldiers took to the streets once again, launching guerrilla strikes against Zincori positions. Every city, every town became a battleground. The resistance had become a unified force, coordinated and powerful. The sheer number of attacks confused the Zincori, who were now spread thin across the planet, desperately trying to hold onto their positions. Amelia and her team blasted off toward the Zincori flagship, their shuttle cutting through the atmosphere with speed and precision. As the countdown on their ship's console ticked away, the crew felt the weight of what they were about to do. Failure was not an option. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The team's approach was silent. Stealth was their greatest ally. They had to slip past the Zincori's advanced sensors and reach the core of the flagship undetected. The shuttle's cloaking systems were their only hope. Once they docked, it would be a matter of infiltrating the ship, delivering the EMP device into the main reactor, and getting out before the aliens could react. The device would overload their systems, shutting down their entire fleet in one final devastating blow. The shuttle slid into position, silently docking onto the underside of the Varkan class. The airlock hissed as the team disembarked, weapons drawn and faces grim with determination. The Zincori had no idea what was about to hit them. Inside the flagship, alarms began to sound as the team breached the outer hull. They had minutes, maybe seconds, to reach the reactor. Every movement, every second, counted. The final countdown was upon them, and there was no turning back. The interior of the Zincori flagship was like nothing the humans had ever seen, an alien labyrinth of glowing, pulsating walls and metallic corridors that seemed to breathe with the ship itself. Every surface hummed with energy, and strange symbols lit up the floor as the team made their way deeper into the heart of the vessel. The air was thick with the stench of foreign technology, and the harsh red glow of warning lights flickered around them. Time was running out. General Amelia Richards led the team with a quiet but resolute intensity, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. The mission was simple: penetrate the core, plant the EMP device, and get out. But in the heart of the Zincori ship, it was becoming painfully clear. Nothing about this was simple. The ship's automated defense systems were already on high alert, and every step felt like a countdown to disaster. The team's footsteps echoed in the vast, cold hallways as they made their way toward the central reactor chamber. They moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, each soldier focused on their task. The hum of the ship's systems grew louder, and the tension in the air was almost unbearable. Every moment felt like an eternity. "They know we're here," whispered Sergeant Marcus Donovan, his voice barely audible as he glanced over his shoulder. "We need to hurry." Amelia nodded, her grip tightening on her rifle. "We can't afford any mistakes." The EMP device, nicknamed the Hammer by the engineers, was in a heavy case on the back of one of the soldiers, and the weight of it seemed to press down on all of them. It was the key to humanity's survival, the weapon that could disable the entire Zincori fleet. But it was also a fragile thing, requiring perfect placement inside the heart of the ship. If it wasn't activated correctly, all of their efforts would have been in vain. As they approached the central chamber, they were met with resistance. A squad of Zincori soldiers, heavily armored and armed with high-tech energy rifles, appeared from behind a set of blast doors. They moved with precision, but they didn't see the humans coming. The team was ready. Without a word, the humans sprang into action. Gunfire rang out, and the corridor was filled with the acrid smell of plasma burns and ozone. The Zincori were swift and deadly, but the humans were faster. A well-placed grenade disabled the first wave of invaders, sending them flying back as the team rushed forward. But more enemies were coming. "They'll keep coming," Lieutenant Sarah Hale said, eyes scanning the approaching hallways. "We need to move now, or we're trapped." Amelia didn't hesitate. She nodded, and the team rushed forward, past the fallen enemies, toward the reactor room. The doors slid open with a heavy metallic groan, revealing the heart of the ship, a massive chamber filled with an ominous, pulsating energy core. It was alive, almost sentient, thrumming with power. At the center of it all was the Zincori's main reactor, a glowing orb suspended in the air, surrounded by a lattice of alien technology. Amelia stepped forward, her boots silent on the smooth black floor. Her voice was steady, despite the chaos unfolding around them. "This is it. Place the device." Sergeant Donovan and his team moved quickly, setting the EMP device in position near the base of the reactor. It had to be perfect. A single misstep could detonate the entire ship prematurely. Sweat beaded on their foreheads as they worked in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. 15 seconds, Donovan muttered, his hands working swiftly to connect the final wires. The reactor's pulsating light grew brighter, and the temperature in the room seemed to rise. The door at the far end of the room opened with a loud hiss. Zincori soldiers flooded in, weapons drawn. The final battle was upon them. But Amelia's team had no time to fight. They had one mission: finish what they started. Now, Amelia shouted. The EMP device activated with a sudden, violent burst of energy. The lights in the room flickered, the alien technology around them sputtered, and a loud guttural hum filled the air. The Zincori soldiers, frozen in place, looked around in confusion as their weapons powered down, their armor shutting down as the EMP pulse spread through the ship's systems. The Varkan-class flagship trembled. The reactor was losing power. The countdown to Earth's victory had begun. But they weren't out of danger yet. The Zincori knew that this could be their last stand, and they would fight to the death. The hum of the EMP device echoed through the chamber, its pulse sending shockwaves through the Zincori flagship. The ship trembled, its once dominant systems now falling into chaos. Lights flickered, consoles blinked out, and the advanced alien technology that had once seemed invincible faltered under the relentless assault. But the humans were not out of danger yet. Amelia Richards stood at the center of the reactor chamber, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the Zincori soldiers storming in from the other side, their heavy boots echoing in the hallway. Time was running out. The EMP had crippled the Zincori ship's systems, but the ship was still intact. If they didn't get out now, they would be trapped. Move. Now. Amelia barked, her voice sharp with urgency. Sergeant Marcus Donovan grabbed the EMP device, and the team quickly pivoted, running toward the exit. The massive doors that led out of the reactor room were closing fast, a final line of defense for the Zincori. The team sprinted toward them, their breaths ragged, adrenaline fueling every step. But as they reached the door, it slammed shut with a heavy thud. Panic surged through Amelia's chest, but she pushed it down. They couldn't be stopped now. They were so close. "Everyone get back," Lieutenant Sarah Hale shouted, rushing forward with a grenade in hand. She hurled it at the door control panel. It exploded with a deafening crack, and the doors sputtered open just enough for them to slip through. Outside the reactor room, the corridor was alive with the sound of alien footfalls. The Zincori soldiers had already begun to regroup, and their heavy weaponry was coming online. There was no way to fight them head-on. They had one choice: escape. "Split up. We'll meet at the hangar," Amelia ordered, knowing they had to move fast if they were going to survive. She and Donovan took the lead, darting down one corridor, while Hale and the rest of the team took another. The hallway was a maze of alien tech, each turn a potential ambush. But they didn't stop running. The world outside was still fighting for survival, and they couldn't afford to fail now. The corridors grew narrower as they neared the hangar. The sound of pursuing Zincori soldiers grew louder, and the air was thick with tension. Just ahead, the hangar doors loomed, their final escape route. If they could reach it, they might have a chance to board the shuttle, and get out of the ship before it was too late. Donovan shot a glance over his shoulder. They're gaining on us. Amelia didn't respond. Instead, she reached down and activated the secondary comms device. Command, this is General Richards. We're headed for the hangar. The EMP is in place, but we need immediate extraction. The Zincori won't let us leave easily. The response was immediate. We're ready for you, General. Get to the shuttle, and we'll be there. Just as they rounded the corner toward the hangar, the first wave of Zincori soldiers appeared. Their weapons glowed ominously as they aimed at the humans. Amelia's team didn't hesitate. They dropped to a crouch and opened fire, their weapons rattling off round after round. The Zincori returned fire with ruthless precision, but their advantage had waned. The humans were faster, more unpredictable. They fought with desperation and determination, knowing that they had no choice but to win. Donovan, his rifle smoking from the intensity of the battle, looked at Amelia. General, we're almost there. Just a little more. A pulse of energy whizzed past his ear, and he ducked instinctively. They were so close now. The hangar doors were only a few meters ahead, but the Zincori were closing in. A final barrage of fire erupted from both sides. But then the hangar doors opened, and a familiar voice rang through the comms. General Richards, this is Captain Yates. You're clear to board. We've got your back. With one last surge of energy, Amelia and her team broke through the final line of defense, racing toward the awaiting shuttle. As they boarded, the doors slammed shut behind them, and the engines roared to life. The shuttle shot into the sky, leaving the Varkan-class flagship behind, now a hulk of deactivated metal and lifeless systems. The EMP had worked. The Zincori fleet was crippled. The final blow had been delivered, and Earth had won. As the shuttle ascended through the atmosphere, Amelia Richards allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The war wasn't over, but they had struck a decisive blow. Humanity had faced extinction and come out victorious. Against all odds, they had shown the galaxy that Earth was not a world to be easily conquered. And as Earth's survivors watched their home grow smaller in the distance, they knew the fight was far from over, but they also knew they were ready.